I noticed it around 6:35 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember the exact time because Wheel of Fortune had just ended, and I was putting her tray away. Same routine, same meals, same muted television glow painting the walls. She sat in that brown recliner with her knees covered by the same blue fleece blanket she always asked for, even in the summer. I walked past her and turned back to say goodnight. And she was staring at nothing, just straight ahead, through the wall, through me, through the damn air, staring with the same pale blue eyes I'd grown up looking into, the same ones that used to tear up when she laughed too hard or got too angry. Only this time they didn't blink, they didn't even twitch. At first I didn't think anything of it. Old people get weird, especially when they're dying. She was on hospice, stage 4 breast cancer that spread to her lungs and bones. The doctor said a year. That was 2.5 years ago. She defied that too. So when I said, "Night, Mom," and she didn't respond, just sat there with her eyes wide open, I chalked it up to exhaustion or one of those dazes she sometimes slipped into after taking her meds. But then I came back an hour later, mostly out of habit, and she was still staring. Same position, same posture, same expression, and still no blinking. I waved my hand in front of her face. "Nothing. Mom?" No answer. I checked her pulse, gently at her wrist, steady. Then her eyes flicked to me, not her head, just her eyes, and still not a single blink. Her lips curled slightly, a slow, unsettling smirk, like she was remembering something she couldn't tell me about. Then she went back to looking ahead. I backed away. I couldn't explain why, but something about it felt wrong, not just medically, but wrong in a way I couldn't categorize. Like watching a dog walk on its hind legs or hearing your name whispered in a crowd when no one's there. The human body is built to blink, to lubricate the eyes, to reset your vision. You don't think about it until someone stops doing it. And then it's all you can think about. She didn't blink when I turned off the light. She didn't blink when I said goodnight again. And when I walked past her room at 3 a.m. to grab a glass of water, she was still sitting in that chair, awake, staring into the dark. Eyes wide, red, and full of tears. Friday morning, she was in the kitchen, same as always, like nothing had happened, scrambling eggs at the stove, humming that old Elvis song again. Can't help falling in love, off-key but consistent, just like she always used to hum it when I was little. Except her eyes didn't look away from the wall as she stirred the pan. I froze. "Mom?" I asked. She didn't turn. "Mom, are you okay?" She spoke without blinking. "I'm fine, baby." Her voice sounded strained, like her throat was raw, or like she was trying not to cry. "You're not blinking." She kept stirring. "I don't need to," she said. Something cracked inside me. What the hell does that mean? "I just don't need to." She looked at me. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd see some hint of a blink. Maybe it was dry eye syndrome or nerve damage or a medication side effect. But no, her eyes, bloodshot now, glassy with thick tears that slowly slipped down her cheeks, just stared and stared and stared. I tried calling her hospice nurse later that day. Melissa left a voicemail. Then I called again and again. No answer. I started Googling. Why do people stop blinking? Hospice patients stop blinking. Eye contact without blinking psychological. I got everything from schizophrenia to deep meditation to brain tumors. Nothing that explained her complete lack of reaction. Nothing about people just deciding not to blink. I even looked through her medication drawer, thinking maybe she'd swapped something. Maybe she was taking something new. Nothing, just the same painkillers, same anti-nausea meds. Same old bottle of morphine syrup I kept under the kitchen sink untouched. I sat across from her for nearly an hour that night, just watching, waiting. She never blinked. I counted the minutes. Every few seconds, more tears dripped down her cheeks, thick and slow like sap. Her eyes twitched, strained, watered, but never closed. She didn't speak unless I did, and when she did, it was like talking to someone pretending to be her. By Saturday morning, her eyes were raw, no other way to describe them. The whites were bloodshot to the point of being almost pink, and the skin underneath was cracked from the dried salt of her tears. She still moved like normal, slow and weak, sure, but nothing alarming. She made toast. She sat in her chair. She watched TV, or rather faced the screen, but not once did her lids shut, not when she sneezed, not when she yawned, not even when she rubbed her eyes with the back of her wrist, hard, over and over, like she was trying to force them shut and they wouldn't obey. I asked her if it hurt. She just nodded. That's when I really started losing it. I sat on the edge of her bed that night, holding her hand like I used to when I was a kid, and I said, "Please, Mom, blink, just once, please." She looked at me with her ruined eyes and smiled. "Can't," she whispered, and then she cried, harder than I'd seen her cry in years. But her eyelids didn't move. Sunday, I called 911. I told them I thought she was having a stroke or a seizure. I didn't know how else to describe it. The EMTs came. 2 of them, young, probably in their 20s. One of them asked her name. She answered. They asked if she knew what day it was. She did. They checked her vitals. Normal. They flashed lights in her eyes, pupils responsive, but still no blinking. I watched them glance at each other. The female EMT asked, "Ma'am, can you blink for me?" My mom smiled again. "I'm trying." I'll never forget how flat her voice sounded when she said it, like she wasn't even surprised anymore, just resigned. They called a supervisor, said they couldn't force her to go to the ER unless she was incoherent or violent. She was neither. She was calm, she was coherent, and she wasn't blinking. They left after 45 minutes. I watched them drive off from the porch, their taillights fading into the summer heat haze. That night, I cried harder than she did. Monday, I sat down at the edge of her bed again. Her eyes were worse. The skin around them was beginning to swell. The lower lids looked like they were bruised, sagging downward from the constant moisture. Her sclera, what was left of the white, was almost yellow now. She didn't say anything. She just held my hand and stared. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. She shook her head. I asked again, "Did someone tell you to do this?" No answer. "Did something happen?" Still nothing. I finally broke. "Please, Mom, I'm scared. I don't know what this is. Please talk to me. You're not acting like yourself." She squeezed my hand gently. And then she said the one thing that's haunted me more than anything else. "I'm afraid if I blink, I won't open my eyes again." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer, she just cried. I stopped sleeping after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured her, staring at me, watching through the dark, not blinking, not moving. I started checking on her every few hours, walking into her room like I was looking in on a corpse, but she was never asleep. She just sat there, upright, awake, her eyes now completely raw. The sclera was streaked with dark veins, the skin beneath peeling from salt and strain. It looked like her eyes were trying to bleed. Yet still, no blinking, no closing, just watching. By the end of the week, she stopped eating. Then she stopped talking. Not because she couldn't. She just didn't want to anymore. Her body was failing. She was down to 90 pounds, skin and bone, but her eyes stayed open. She stayed seated in that chair like she was waiting for something. her fingers twitching occasionally, her breath slow, labored. But she kept those damn eyes open. Sometimes I wondered if this was just it, if this was what dying looked like. Sometimes I wondered if she was already gone, and whatever was left behind just didn't know how to stop watching. I'm writing this now because it's been 9 days. 9 days since she last blinked. Her body is deteriorating. Her spine is hunched. Her mouth is cracked from dehydration. I've begged the hospice care team to intervene. No one has an answer. She won't close her eyes, not even to sleep. Not even when I begged her, screamed at her. Not even when I collapsed beside her chair and cried until I vomited. She just stares, through me, past me, at me. And sometimes I think I see something reflected in her pupils. Not the TV, not the window, not me. Something behind me. Something I refuse to turn around and look at. Day 10. She started mouthing something that day. No voice, just the movement of her lips, slow and repetitive. I only noticed it when I bent down to adjust her blanket and caught the motion out of the corner of my eye. At first I thought it was nothing. Maybe a reflex, maybe some unconscious tic from the medications. But after a minute of watching, it became clear. She was saying the same thing, over and over. Don't let them in. That's what I thought it looked like anyway. I mouthed it to myself in the mirror to be sure, matched the shapes, the words fit, don't let them in. It chilled me in a way I couldn't explain. I wanted to ask her what it meant, but something inside me locked up. My voice didn't come out. I just stood there, watching her raw, lidless eyes and dry, peeling skin, and listened to the faint whistle of her breath. She didn't look at me. She just kept mouthing those words. That night, the silence in the house was unbearable. Hospice homes are supposed to be peaceful, right? Soft, beeping machines. Gentle nurses, a hum of activity to distract you from the fact that someone is dying in the next room. But it was just me here, me, and the sound of her cracked lips sticking and peeling as they formed the same phrase. The house made its usual noises, floorboards settling, pipes knocking, a branch scraping the roof in the wind, but every creak felt deliberate, like I was noticing them more now because something wasn't right. Not in the someone's here way, in the you've stayed awake too long and now the world feels off kind of way. I didn't sleep. Day 11, she didn't move. Not once. She hadn't eaten in 3 days, but she wouldn't drink either now. I held a spoonful of broth to her mouth and her lips stayed shut. No refusal, just stillness. Like the signal wasn't getting through anymore. Her eyes, God, her eyes, they were getting worse. Not just red now, yellowed too. The corners had started to crust, little flecks of dried pus forming hard beads that broke and ran down her cheek when she twitched. But she was awake, completely alert, tracking me with her gaze always, watching me like she knew something I didn't, like she was afraid to tell me, or maybe incapable. The worst part, she seemed aware, fully aware of how horrifying she looked, fully aware of how I flinched every time I caught her gaze, aware of the fact that her body was failing while her eyes refused to close. There's something about eye contact when it lasts too long. It's like looking into someone else's mind and seeing that it's not working right anymore, or maybe it's working too well. I started researching eye function that day, basic stuff at first. How long can someone go without blinking? What happens when tear production stops? Can a person die from keeping their eyes open? The answers were clinical, detached. No one seemed to be describing what I was seeing. No one said anything about people refusing to blink for 10 straight days despite extreme pain and exhaustion. No articles mentioned loved ones mouthing cryptic warnings and sitting upright in chairs for days without sleep. It felt like I was the only one watching this happen. Like there wasn't a word for it, like no one had ever lived through it long enough to write it down. Day 12. I found her standing. She must have used the walker, or maybe the wall, but she was standing in the middle of the hallway, barefoot, facing the closed bathroom door. Her eyes looked worse than ever. I called out to her. She didn't turn, just stood there, blinking once. Once. It was so fast I almost missed it. I didn't even celebrate it. It scared me. That blink felt wrong. Not relief, something else. Like the act of blinking had taken something from her. She wobbled. I rushed forward to catch her before she fell, and for the first time in days she looked at me not with that constant vacant stare, but with panic. Real panic. The kind you see in people just before they say, "I'm dying." But she didn't say that. She just mouthed something again, too fast to read. Then her knees gave out. She hasn't stood up since. She's back in the chair now, sitting, silent, fragile, her skin paper thin, her mouth slightly open but dry. I can hear the tiny rasp of her breath every few seconds. Her chest barely moves. I think she blinked that one time by accident, and I think it broke something inside her. Day 13. The nurse came by again, the same one who'd been checking in twice a week. She didn't say much, just looked at my mom's vitals, checked her eyes, her pulse, tried to get a verbal response. Nothing. She leaned down and whispered, "Do you know where you are, Margaret?" My mother's eyes twitched, the only thing that moved. The nurse frowned. "She should be unresponsive by now," she muttered. "What do you mean?" Her body's shutting down, but her eyes, she's not supposed to be this alert. We both stood there for a moment, just staring at her. The nurse tapped her pen against the clipboard. "Has she always looked at you like that?" I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say? No, not like that. Not with the silent intensity of someone trying to hold the world together through will alone. Not like someone who knows something's coming, and the only thing keeping it away is her refusal to look away. That night, I started sitting up with her. I put a chair in the living room, facing hers. We sat across from each other for hours, just looking, not speaking, not touching. Just two people trying to understand something that didn't want to be understood. Her body was failing, but her eyes were still watching, and I was starting to get used to it. That terrified me more than anything. Day 14. Her pupils are clouded now. There's a milky film spreading across both eyes. At first I thought it was cataracts, but it's moving too fast. By evening, the irises were barely visible. Just two foggy circles staring back at me, still open, still watching, no blinking. Not even as the wetness dries to salt and the lids begin to swell from friction. Not even as her shoulders start to hunch forward and her neck stiffens like rigor mortis is setting in early. I tried to put drops in her eyes. She shook her head. It's the first thing she's done on her own in days. Her head barely moved, but it was enough. No drops, no help. She'd rather go blind than blink. Day 15. I called my sister in Ohio. She hadn't visited in years. She didn't even recognize Mom's voice the last time they spoke. I told her what was happening, tried to explain without sounding insane. "She hasn't blinked," I said. "For how long?" "Over 2 weeks now." Silence. "That's not possible." "I know. Is she on anything? Hallucinogens? Some new drug?" "No, it's not like that. She just won't blink, can't blink. I don't know." She offered to come visit. I told her not to. I don't know why. Something inside me just said, let her stay away. This is ours now, our thing. That brings us to today, day 16. 16 days of open eyes, tearing skin, rasping breath, and silence. She hasn't spoken in almost a week now, but she doesn't need to. Her presence fills the house, her stare fills the air. The TV is off, the lights are dim. I haven't left the house in days. Every time I try, I feel like I'm abandoning her. Every time I stand at the front door, I feel like something irreversible will happen if I step outside, something I'll never be able to take back. I don't know how long she can last like this. I don't know how I can last, but she's still here, and she still hasn't blinked. And when I look at her now, truly look, I don't see terror anymore. I see endurance. I see something deeper. I see a human being holding something at bay without ever telling me what it is. And maybe I'm not meant to know. Maybe some things aren't for sons to understand about their mothers. Maybe the terror of the unknown isn't what happens to you, but what happens when someone you love goes somewhere you can't follow, somewhere behind open eyes. Day 17. I changed her again today. I try to keep her clean, dignified, I guess. It's hard now. Her skin is so fragile I'm afraid to touch her. Even warm water feels too harsh. Her shoulders have started to bruise just from sitting too long in the recliner. Purple marbling beneath translucent skin. She barely reacts when I move her. Not from pain, not from confusion, just nothing. The same blank, exhausted watching. Still no blinking. She watches me while I change her. It's not shame I see in her eyes. Not even sadness, just patience, like she's waiting for something, or maybe someone, or maybe nothing at all. She hasn't mouthed anything since day 12, just sits and watches. I checked her eyes again in the bathroom mirror after. It's hard to look at them now if I'm being honest. They're not the same color anymore. Not really. The pale blue has faded under the haze of yellowed film and inflamed veins. They look more like marble than anything human, clouded and streaked with red. And yet they still lock on to mine every time I glance her way. Still aware, still conscious, still very much awake. I don't understand it. That's the part that keeps breaking me open. I don't understand it. She should be unconscious. She should be asleep. She should have blinked. Even the hospice nurse, quiet, calm, clinical, left the last visit more disturbed than she let on. She said it was unusual, said she'd ask someone higher up and check in again tomorrow, but she hasn't returned. Her absence hangs over the house like a broken promise. Day 18. This morning, I found her hand resting on the arm of the chair in a strange way, not limp, not paralyzed, just posed, deliberate, like she had moved it while I was sleeping. Fingers splayed, index finger angled slightly toward the floor. I didn't think much of it at first, just adjusted it back onto her blanket, but when I stepped away, I caught her eyes shift to that same spot on the floor. Not fast, not even sudden, just subtle, almost like she was checking to see if something was still there. I followed her gaze. It was just carpet, nothing unusual, nothing out of place, but she stared for hours. I eventually taped a washcloth over the spot just to see if she'd react. She didn't move again. Her gaze stayed fixed. Even when I moved the cloth an inch to the left, nothing changed. It's not the floor she was watching. It's the idea of something. I went to bed with the image burned into my brain. My mother, watching an empty piece of floor like it might one day move. Day 19. She blinked again today. Twice. Once when I lifted her to sponge her back. Her eyelids twitched just barely. Not a full blink. More like her body trying to remember the motion and failing halfway through. The second time, it happened while I was pouring water into the basin. I turned back and caught it mid-blink. Her eyelids scraped over her eyes like sandpaper and popped open again immediately, as if something inside wouldn't allow them to shut all the way. Her eyes were visibly worse after that. Drier, more cracked. I could see little ridges forming along the sclera, like the surface was splitting under its own pressure. She started breathing heavier after that too. Not panic, not struggle, just heavier, like whatever was holding her together was starting to fray. Later that evening, I sat in the kitchen with all the lights off, staring at a blank pad of paper. I'd tried writing a journal for myself, keeping track of what was happening. I thought maybe it would help, make things make sense, but I couldn't write a single word. What would I even say? Dear God, my mother won't blink. It's been 19 days. She's wasting away before my eyes. And all I can do is watch. There is no category for this. There's no support group for this kind of grief. She's not gone. She's not even truly dying. But she's also not here. She's something in between. Something I can't explain. Something I'm terrified of trying to. Day 20. Today marks 20 days without sleep. 20 days without blinking. 20 days of waking up and finding her in the same chair in the same spot with the same look. The house is unbearably still now. There's no noise except the hum of the refrigerator and the clock ticking in the hallway. But even the clock feels cruel. Every tick is a reminder that time is moving and we aren't. I spent most of the day on the couch across from her. Didn't talk, didn't move, just sat there and watched her. At one point I stood up and turned her recliner slightly, 10 degrees to the left, just to see if she would readjust. She didn't, but her eyes did. They moved. Tracked the original position, back to the spot on the floor, that same piece of carpet, like gravity, like something unseen and fixed was anchoring her gaze there. I finally broke around 7 p.m. I knelt beside her chair and asked, "What is it? Why won't you blink? Why are you still here?" She didn't move, didn't even twitch, but her mouth opened slowly, and for the first time in over a week, she whispered something. A single word, raspy, paper thin, still. That was all. I waited, thinking she'd say more. She didn't. I said, "Still what?" No answer. Just her eyes, fogged and bloodied and parched, settling back into the same steady stare. It's 3:12 a.m. now. I'm sitting beside her again, notebook in hand, writing this by lamplight while she breathes. I don't think she's got much left. And yet, somehow, I know she's going to be sitting here again tomorrow. I know she's not leaving, not yet. Not until something happens, not until whatever this is decides it's over. And if it never does, then she'll keep sitting here. With those awful, patient eyes. Eyes that should have dried out by now. Eyes that should have closed, but won't. I don't know if I'll keep writing tomorrow. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll need to. Because at this point, I've stopped asking why she won't blink. Now, I'm asking how long I can go without doing it too. And what I'll see if I finally let them close. Day 21. I think she's dying. I don't mean like before when the nurses were talking time frames and palliative care. I mean now. For real. Her breath has changed. It comes in tiny gasps, like the air doesn't want to stay in her lungs. Each inhale rattles, each exhale skips. Like a clock missing teeth. She hasn't moved at all today. Not a twitch, not even the faint muscle flickers I'd gotten used to. Her chest rises once every 30 seconds, give or take. I started counting them just to keep my mind from unraveling. 15 in the last 15 minutes, then 14, then 13, but her eyes still open. Still looking, still burning with that impossible, inhuman endurance. At some point I sat down beside her and said goodbye. I said it softly, like I was afraid to break whatever balance was holding her here. "I love you," I whispered, like a child again. Her lips didn't move, but one final tear formed at the corner of her left eye. It didn't roll down, it just sat there, suspended. Like it was waiting, too. That night, I woke up on the couch, fully clothed. I didn't remember falling asleep, and when I looked at the clock, it was 3:17 a.m. Same time I'd been waking up every night lately. I sat up, heart pounding. The house felt wrong. Not loud, not quiet, just wrong. Like something fundamental had shifted. like a thread had snapped somewhere just out of sight. The light in her room was off. I never turned it off. I never let it go off. I stood up too quickly, dizzy, legs numb. Stumbled into the hall and pushed open her door. She wasn't in the recliner. The blankets were bunched at the foot of the chair, her pillow tilted. The seat was empty. Empty. I froze. She couldn't have moved. She couldn't stand, let alone walk, and yet gone. I checked the bathroom, kitchen, backyard, front porch, every room, nothing. No signs of struggle, no trail, just absence. I went back to the recliner and sat, tried to think, tried not to cry, tried to figure out where a 90-pound dying woman with open, ruined eyes could disappear to in the middle of the night. That's when I saw it, the window, barely open, just a crack, no more than half an inch. We never opened that window, not once in 20 years. It had been painted shut since before I was born. It faced the neighbor's siding. There was no view, and yet it was open, just wide enough for what? I pushed it shut. It didn't resist. No old paint, no stiffness, no struggle. It closed like it had been opened yesterday, like it was meant to. I called the police, filed a missing persons report. The officer didn't even write anything until I mentioned she couldn't walk. Then he frowned. "You're sure she didn't leave in an ambulance or something?" "There's no record of that," I said, "and no one came. I was here, the whole time." He just nodded, asked if she had dementia. I said no. He asked if I did. I didn't answer. Day 22. They didn't find her. The police searched the house, the neighborhood, even the woods half a mile out. Nothing. It didn't make sense. No one vanishes like that. Not on oxygen, not half-starved, not when they haven't blinked in 3 weeks. I tried to give them a photo, but even the one I printed looked wrong. Like she wasn't really in it. Like she'd never really been there. After the officers left, I sat on the recliner and stared at the window. It was still closed, but I could feel air leaking through the cracks. Day 23. I stayed in the living room all day. Didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't blink. I was afraid I'd miss something if I did. I watched the spot where her chair had been. The imprint in the cushion was still there. The dent where her spine had pressed against the upholstery. Even the little droplet of dried fluid on the armrest was still visible. But she was gone. No body, no explanation, just memory. Day 24. The hospice nurse came back. She hadn't heard. She called me after knocking twice and getting no answer. When I let her in, I expected her to be shocked, confused, scared. She wasn't. She looked at the empty chair, then back at me, and said softly, "It happens." I didn't understand. "What happens?" She hesitated, sat on the couch beside me. They hold on longer than they should. Eyes open, always awake. Then one day, they're just not. "That's not an answer," I said. She didn't look at me, but her voice lowered. "It's not something we're trained to talk about. It doesn't come up often, but when it does, we write it off. We call it exhaustion, confusion, say we must have misremembered, but we didn't." She looked at the window, then stood up and said, "Call me if she comes back." That night, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and stared at the recliner. Didn't turn on the lights, didn't move, didn't blink. I stayed awake all night. Nothing happened. Day 25. I put the chair in storage, folded her blanket, emptied the refrigerator of all her favorite snacks, turned off the television. Then I stood in the living room and tried to imagine the house without her in it. It didn't work. She's still here. Even now I feel her watching me, not like a ghost, not a haunting, just a memory that won't unstick, a presence that lives in the quiet. A pair of eyes I still see when I close mine. Final entry. I don't know what happened to my mother. I don't know why she stopped blinking. I don't know why she stayed awake for 21 days when her body should have failed long before. I don't know what she was waiting for, or what she might have seen that made her so afraid to close her eyes. I only know this: I haven't blinked in almost 12 minutes. I don't feel tired, I don't feel scared, but I do feel watched, and part of me wonders if this was the plan all along. That one day I'd stop blinking too, and when I do, maybe I'll understand, or maybe I'll disappear just like she did.